Willkommen. This is German 2, Chapter 10, Vocabulary. So Deutsch Aktuell, Kapitel 10, or Deutsch Aktuell 2, Kapitel 10. So start with me, please. If you have a 7th edition, 364, 364. If you have a 5th or a 6th edition, 317. So we're talking about occupations here. So one of the things that is different between the two editions is that the newer edition gives both the masculine and the feminine form of each occupation. So let me just show you here on the slide. You see the very first one says der Abentwickler, and then if it was a woman, it would be die Abentwicklerin. And so for the ones that were additions in the 7th edition, I have shown you both forms, but please know if you have a 5th or a 6th edition that where you have these things, that usually you just add the IN. There's one difference, and that is for nurses. The male and the female nurse actually have a different word. So let me start with this. Identifying occupation. So der Beruf is just your occupation. And then Apotheker or Apothekerin, Abentwickler, Arzt, and then a woman is Ärztin. So on that one, not only do you add the IN, you have an umlaut. Elektriker, Elektrikerin, Marktforscher, Flugbegleiter. The hairstylist or beautician, your book lists both spellings, Friseur and Friseuse, Grafiker, Informatiker, Ingenieur. Now, nurses, male nurse, Krankenpfleger, female nurse, Krankenschwester. And so that Krankenschwester comes from the time when most nurses were nuns. So the sister in the church would have been the one to help care for the sick. So that's why we have Krankenschwester, the sister caring for the sick. And then Maler, Marktanalytiker, Mechaniker, Polizist, Rechtsanwalt, Sekretär, Unternehmer, and Videospieltester, Zahnarzt. Right. And then job opportunities. These in the second column here are, there's no difference between editions. Ich habe mich bei einer Firma beworben. Hast du das schriftlich oder mündlich gemacht? Bist du jetzt ein Azubi or bist du jetzt eine Azubi? That's the word for an apprentice. And you notice it does not change for gender, but the article changes. Heutzutage gibt es fast gar keine Post mehr. So your book says today, but you may want to write in there that heutzutage also means like nowadays. So nowadays there's hardly any mail anymore. Das nennt man Fortschritt der Technologie. Das kann mir viel nutzen. Viel Erfolg. And then the dentist. You need to know these phrases for the readings in the chapter. Wann wirst du die Zahnspange los? And sie sollen richtig wachsen. Okay, now on page 375, 375, oder 327, 327. We're talking about different ailments or about the eye doctor. And there's no difference between the two editions. So, was fehlt dir denn? And here are things that could be wrong with you. Ich habe Kopfschmerzen. So it's literally head pains, which is how they say a headache. Halsschmerzen, throat pains, sore throat. Zahnschmerzen, Rückenschmerzen, Bauchschmerzen. Or if you have no pains, ich bin ganz gesund. Hast du Fieber? So in English, we say, do you have a fever? They just say, do you have fever? Hast du Fieber? Fühlst du dich nicht wohl? Mir ist schwindelig. So remember when we talked about how do you feel? And I say like, wie geht es Ihnen, or wie geht es dir? We had that dative construction that at the beginning of the year, we just memorized what the dative construction meant. And now we know, how's it going with you? Wie geht es dir? And when I told you to respond, I told you never say, I am good, ich bin gut. Otherwise, you're making a statement about your morals. Instead, you say, es geht mir gut. It's going well with me, or it's going well to me. Well, the same thing here with like dizzy. You don't say, I am dizzy. You don't have a to be verb. You say, it's dizzy to me. Mir ist schwindelig. And very often in German, when we're talking about how we feel, we use this construction. So one of the funny mistakes that I made when I was in Austria is something like, we're going to a new place and I'm a little nervous about it till I tell my friend, ich bin unangenehm, I'm uncomfortable. But what that means is I'm an uncomfortable person. Like, it's not so fun to be around me. So instead, you have to say this, mir ist unangenehm, like that's uncomfortable to me to do that thing. So mir ist schwindelig, it's dizzy to me, basically. And then ich habe mich erkältet. Right? And then the ophthalmologist. Soll zu einem Augenarzt gehen, and literally Augen is eyes, Arzt is doctor. So he should go to the eye doctor, Augenarzt. Die Augen scheinen in Ordnung zu sein. Sieh einmal hier rein. Es ist nicht deutlich. Du brauchst deine Brille. Es wird viel ausmachen. Ich schreibe es auf. Setzt eine Brille auf. Now look at those last two sentences. Aufschreiben means to write something down, and it's a separate prefix verb. Ich schreibe es auf. And aufsetzen is like to put something on. So again, separate prefix verb. Setzt eine Brille auf. All right, finally, the giant list at the end of the chapter, 383 or 331. And we have Apotheker, Abentwickler, Arzt, aufschreiben, and there's that separate prefix verb. Now notice, look inside the parentheses where it says schreib auf and aufgeschrieben. Those are forms you have not learned yet. However, there is something important in that parentheses that you can gain information. See how it says schreib auf and the auf is behind the schreib? That tells you this verb comes apart. It's a separate prefix. So as we learn the verbs, those parentheses behind them tell you, like by that construction, even though you don't know what that is telling you exactly yet, it tells you this is a separate prefix verb. And then if you are curious about which verbs are separate prefix, in the German English Vocabulary Dictionary, at the end of your book, in the very end near the glossary, or that is the glossary, near the grammar section, for example, a verb we have already learned, mitkommen. If I turn to that verb mitkommen in the end of the book, in parentheses, it says komm mit. And so it's like, I can't remember if it comes apart. Flip to the end of the book, look in that glossary, and oh yeah, they bump it to the end. So those other things inside the parentheses, we're going to learn what they mean. It's actually just, it's past tense forms, and we'll get there. You aren't responsible for what's in that parentheses yet. But what I want you to take away from that is the parentheses behind a verb tell me, does this verb separate or not? And that's a very helpful thing to know. Okay, back into the chapter, right? Let me pick up with aufschreiben, aufsetzen, auftauchen, Augenarzt, ausmachen, Azubi. And notice the plural of Azubi is Azubis, a very rare plural in German to just add S. Bauch, Bauchschmerzen, Beruf, bewerben. Now look in front of bewerben. You see the SICH? So bewerben is a verb. The SICH tells me it's a reflexive verb. We haven't learned to do that yet, but as you learn bewerben, I want you to memorize sich bewerben so that you know when we hit the grammar for reflexive verbs, you know which ones apply. Brille, deutlich, Doktor, ehrlich, einstellen, Elektriker, Erfolg, sich erkälten, fehlen. And notice that little phrase, was fehlt dir, is like, fehlen means to be missing, but if I ask what is missing with you, it's like, what's the matter with you? Are you sick? Do you have a headache? Do you have a fever? Was fehlt dir? Fieber, Firma, Flugbegleiter, Fortschritt, Friseur, Friseuse, fühlen, gar nicht. Gesund, Grafiker, Halsschmerzen, hereinsehen, herumlaufen, heutzutage, there's that nowadays that I told you about, hingehen, Informatik, Informatiker, Ingenieur, Kopfschmerzen, Korrespondenz, Krankenhaus, Krankenpfleger, Krankenschwester. So a hospital is a house for the sick, Krankenhaus. Pflegen means to care for, so a male nurse is a caretaker for the sick, Krankenpfleger, and the female nurse is Krankenschwester. She's the sister who cares for the sick. Loswerden, Maler, Marktanalytiker, Marktforscher, Mechaniker, Medizin, melden, and mündlich, normal, nützen, Optiker, Ordnung, and this little phrase, in Ordnung sein. If everything is in order, then it means I'm okay. And so, like if you're having a problem, you're trying to work it out, your mom might just say to you, alles in Ordnung? Like, is everything in order? But she means, is everything okay? Alles in Ordnung? And Patient, Polizist, Rechtsanwalt, rehabilitieren, Rezeption, Rückenschmerzen, scheinen, schlimmer, schriftlich, schwindlig, Sekretär, sicher, Tablette, tapfer, Technologie, Termin, überstehen, Unfall, Unternehmer, untersuchen, sich verletzen, and notice that's another reflexive verb, verschreiben, Videospiele-Tester, sich vorstellen, another reflexive, vorüber sein, wohl, and here's an idiom, das können Sie wohl sagen. In English, we would go, you can say that again. There's no again in that. But in German, it's like, yes, that you can say that, right? That's really true. Zahnarzt, Zahnschmerzen, Zahnspange. Now, direct your eyes to the slide. I want to show you just a couple of things on the slide. First of all, in the third column on the slide, I want you to go down to the word Metzger, the word for butcher. Now, that's in the older edition, but not the new edition. And so even those with the new edition, I'd like you to memorize that word, der Metzger, because one of the unique things about Germany is that that many of the towns still have like a little in-town butcher where you go get fresh meat, just sort of a little mom and pop shop. So I just want to point that out to you, and I want you to memorize that word. Now, look right underneath Metzger. I want you to see the word Unternehmer, and that's an entrepreneur. If you break it apart, Unter means under, Nehmer means taker. So my English brain always wants Unternehmer to be an undertaker. But it's someone who undertakes a business, entrepreneur. Now, this next word isn't in your book at all, but underneath Unternehmer, I've written Leichenbestatter. And Leichenbestatter is the word for a mortician or an undertaker. I'm not testing you on Leichenbestatter. But because my brain always wants to make Unternehmer have to do with dead bodies, I'm giving you both these words as a pair because that was how I managed to not make the mistake anymore, was to sort of see how the words work. So like I said, you don't have to memorize Leichenbestatter. Unternehmer's in your chapter, and Metzger, even though it's in the older edition but not the new, I would like those of you with the 7th edition to memorize it. So, all right, that's it. Thank you very much.